Coming up on this episode of One-on-One Sports,
we take a look at the hottest MLB players,
give an early college football playoff prediction,
all that and so much more.
And it all starts
right now.
Hello and welcome to this episode of One-on-One Sports. I'm Andrew Vandellis.
And I'm Matt Holzeffel. Let's jump right in with the quick hitters. Last Monday, Saints quarterback Drew Brees broke the all-time NFL passing yards record with a 62-yard touchdown to Traquan Smith. Andrew, where does Brees rank among all-time NFL QBs, and is he this year's MVP?
He is a top 5 quarterback of all time, and he's been the dark horse of the NFL for a long time. Stats don't lie. Super Bowl 44 MVP. All-time leader in passing yards, as you mentioned, 11-time Pro Bowler and counting, but without a doubt, he's one of the greatest of all time. MVP, I'm not quite sure.
I don't understand how he's so underrated. People are talking about their top quarterbacks. You hear Manning, you hear Rodgers, you hear Brady. Why is Drew Brees so left out? He's the best deep ball accuracy quarterback of all time. He is almost every record. He's set passer rating records. He's set yards records, touchdown records. He holds so many major records, and he holds even more when he retires.
I see 3 things that are certain in life: death, taxes, and drafting Drew Brees in fantasy football.
Absolutely. I know I did.
And I think he's a good lock for MVP, but he is one of the favorites, but with Mahomes in the running, Todd Gurley could make a case. Brady's always on the radar. I don't think he's an absolute shoo-in for MVP.
You just can't overlook these 0 interceptions. He's the last quarterback with no picks. It's astonishing because even Mahomes has 3 now. Drew Brees is great. He deserves MVP consideration.
And after a shaky start against the Bucs, the Saints are now at the top of the NFC South. Nothing but up for them.
Absolutely.
It would appear that Jimmy Butler and the Minnesota Timberwolves saga will be rolling right into the start of the season. Last Wednesday, Butler showed up at the Timberwolves practice and took a third-string team to a victory over the first team. Along the way, Butler targeted many in the organization, including GM Scott Layden, saying, "You expletive need me. You can't win without me." Matt, is Jimmy Butler wrong for doing this?
Absolutely not. He requested a trade at the beginning of the offseason, didn't get one, and he has so many problems with the Timberwolves that are so warranted. The other players in the organization don't hustle like he does. He's treated like a third fiddle. He's the best player on the team. No reason Wiggins and Town should be in front of him. He's their best player, and he's right. They do effing need him because he's very good, and he's their best player.
I agree with him 100% as well. It's frustrating seeing the situation go down like this. And he said what we all were feeling. He knows he's not the most talented on the team or has the best potential, but he's a key component to this team. He has the most drive. He is the most passionate about this team. And without him, they probably wouldn't make the playoffs. He made a statement, and I stand by it 100%.
I agree that he is, he's the hardest working on this team. And when you say that, well, we want to trade you, but we'll just keep you. I agree that they should try to work things out with him with Scott Layden and Coach Thibodeau. But you got to give him more. He deserves more. He's working the hardest, and we saw it when he beat their first team with a team full of third stringers. He needs respect.
Butler just getting the short end of the stick here in Minnesota.
Yeah, it's disrespectful. I hate to see it. Late last week, the UFC issued suspensions for both Conor McGregor and Khabib Nurmagomedov following their brawl after their fight in Las Vegas. Both fighters received letters informing them of their suspensions, which is said to last just 10 days. And is that enough as a punishment for these two guys?
So here's what I think. If the UFC wasn't going to suspend McGregor for the bus shenanigans he pulled earlier this year, I don't see why people think 10 days is an unfair thing. If they're not going to discipline McGregor for committing, a crime, 10 days, you shouldn't be surprised that the UFC does this. Do I think it's right? Not necessarily. But do I think it's fair? No. But at the same time, I'm just not surprised. And the UFC is looking to make money off this rematch. So endangering that would be bad.
I think that, so the Nevada Athletic Commission will meet again on the 24th of October once the investigation is further along to see if they should be indefinitely suspended, which they should be. I think after this 10 days over, we'll see more suspensions. I want to set the record straight, though. On April 5th, Conor McGregor attacked Khabib's bus, a bus of a number of UFC fighters. That's fine. On April 4th, Khabib slapped one of Conor McGregor's teammates, Artem Lobov. People forget about that. Khabib started this, Conor did not, and that's what is overlooked. I hate to see it.
Either way, Khabib is threatened to leave the UFC if one of his teammates is fired, so that could unravel into an interesting scenario.
Which you could see, absolutely.
Odell Beckham Jr. decided he was over the kicking net and has shifted his focus to a fan on the sidelines as the subject of his seasonal meltdown. During the Giants' Thursday night loss to the Eagles, Beckham was seen yelling at the inanimate object during the game. Matt, what do the Giants need to do about Odell, and what do they need to do in general to turn the season around?
Odell Beckham is not the problem.
I agree.
Eli Manning is not the problem, and we'll get into that. There are so many problems in New York, and it doesn't start with Eli. It does not start with Odell. It starts with the offensive line, the defense, the play calling. There's so many problems, and you can't pin it all on one person, especially not two people who have been there through thick and thin in Eli and Odell.
At the same time, while I agree with the defense, 27th in points allowed, 24th, basically in the bottom half, if not the bottom 2/3 of the league, and all these stats on defense, they're walking on the field. There's no motivation by anyone not named Jenkins or Ogletree. And at the same time, while the offensive line is absolute trash, Eli doesn't have the time to throw to Odell, but he's not using Odell in the same way. When you have the pocket collapsing like that, Eli's still throwing ducks. I don't think it's bad, but only one man is going to get you to turn the season around, and it's Saquon Barkley.
Odell's average catch position on the field was 6 yards past the line of scrimmage weeks 1 through 4. That was different in the Panthers game. He had a long touchdown. Look, Odell's not the problem. Everything else is the problem, not Odell. Look, and Eli we trust. Leave Eli alone.
This is all I got to say about that. But that's all the time we have left for the quick hitters.
When we come back, we'll talk some of the hottest players during the MLB postseason. MLB is down to their final 4 teams who are currently battling it out in the championship series. I'm joined by Evan Piercy and David Flint to break down the championship matchups and look at who's performing the best for each team. So, David, we'll start with you. The Houston Astros currently tied with the Red Sox 1-1. Who's been their best performer so far?
I don't think there's any question that Justin Verlander's a great pick. I saw an article on MLB.com today that said the trade for him last year may have been the best trade ever. Yes, at times he's been a little inconsistent.
Best trade ever? Really?
Disagree?
I don't. The thing with Justin Verlander is he's a pitcher. He pitches once every 5 days, maybe an extra day in there out of the bullpen. So, yes, he's a good talent and he's a good pitcher for the Astros, but he's not an everyday player that's in the lineup battling it out. That's where my pick, Alex Bregman, I'm going to come out, this is a little bit of a hot take, but he is the next Derek Jeter.
Wow.
That's high praise.
Player number 2.
That's hot.
He comes up clutch when the Astros need it, and especially in the postseason.
Okay. See the next Mr. October?
I want to say Mr. October, but I'm just going to say he's the next Derek Jeter. He already has 1 ring under his belt. Talented defensive player, heads up base running, great with a bat, but not necessarily hitting for power, but more hitting for average. You see him, he has a on-base percentage over 800 in the playoffs, batting average over 300 in the playoffs, and he's the spark plug that drives the engine of the Houston Astros. He's getting on base, he's allowing them to expand their offense, hit and run. He can steal bases, he can do it all, and he is the reason why the Houston Astros are so deadly.
Right. Astros looking to go to their 2nd straight World Series, but they have to beat the best team in the AL this year, the Boston Red Sox. Who's been Boston's best player?
Boston's best player is the person sitting on the bench. That's the manager, Alex Cora. He's made the moves. You saw in the Yankees-Red Sox series, completely changes his lineup in Game 3, puts in Brock Holt, puts in Steven Vasquez. Steven Vasquez gets an RBI single, I believe, in the 1st or 2nd. Brock Holt hits for the cycle. He's making the best choices and therefore putting the team in the best place to win. Without him, I don't think the Red Sox would be here.
I agree 100% there. I mean, Alex Cora, keep in mind, he's only 42 years old.
Yeah.
He's in his 1st season managing the Red Sox. He played in the MLB as recently as 2011. He's played against a lot of the players still in the league. He's a player's manager. He knows how players like to operate in today's modern game. You saw the fire in his belly when he got ejected for arguing calls. And, well, that's not necessarily a great thing. It shows he's willing to stick up for his players. Players love to play for managers like that, especially when they're this recently removed from playing the game themselves. So Alex Cora is the man in Boston right now.
I mean, he was the X factor in the series against the Yankees. He completely outmanaged Aaron Boone in
Is he
every
manager of the year?
possible
You
way.
guys think Alex Cora manager of the year?
I wouldn't say
Certainly
manager of
top
the year,
3 picks, yes.
but definitely top.
All right, MLB is moving towards younger managers. Aaron Boone, Alex Cora, just a couple of guys. Let's talk about the Brewers now. The first team in the NLCS, they have a 2-1 lead on the Dodgers. Who has been their key player?
Christian Yelich, MVP, I think, and the whole team's been great, but the veteran leadership that he's shown, hitting for average, because the Brewers are still a very young team. Craig Counsell hasn't been a manager for too terribly long, and he endured some tough seasons when he first got to Milwaukee, so the presence that Yelich has brought to them really, I think, is irreplaceable even with Ryan Braun, because Braun's in the 2nd half of his career, had the PED issue that came back to bite him when they figured out he lied. So Christian Yelich, just his presence has been great for the Brewers.
I have to agree. Can't go wrong with the MVP, but I have to say just the entire team as a whole. I mean, look at this, 13-1 in their last 14 games, which is incredible. Their pitching has been good. Starting pitching was kind of a weak point for the Brewers coming into the season. They're able to get enough done to turn it over to that devastating bullpen with Jeffries back there that the Brewers have. Christian Yelich, Lorenzo Cain, Aguilar. This team is definitely going to be scary, and it's not just one player, so you can't single out one person. It's the entire team that's getting it done for him.
Yelich certainly has to be the NL MVP. The whole team, that's cheating. We'll let it slide. Let's go with the LA Dodgers. They're down 2-1 to the Brewers we just talked about. Who has been the Dodgers' most important player?
The Dodgers' most important player is the one they picked up this year at the trade deadline. It's Manny Machado. He's doing what the Dodgers got him to do. He is, a catalyst in that lineup. He's hitting home runs. He's hitting .286, but he has a slugging percentage of 1.7. So, he's driving in those runs. He's getting the extra base hits. The one thing that I'm going to say negative about him is he has 8 strikeouts so far this postseason. That number for me is way too high. But the Dodgers got him to drive in runs. So you want him swinging the bat. You don't want him taking pitches. That's the job for Jock Peterson at the top of the lineup.
And you got to remember that Manny Machado doesn't have a whole lot of playoff experience anyway. Yeah, he went to a few with the Orioles, but not a ton. But my player is Max Muncy. The Dodgers basically stole him or got him for extremely cheap. He started this year in AAA in Oklahoma City, coming from the athletics organization where he had a cup of coffee in the big leagues, then got sent back down. He came up in the first month of the season, and ever since then he's been lightning on fire for the most part. But the stat that stood out to me about him, so far in this postseason, he's drawn 8 walks.
Yeah, he's
turned most of those into runs. So
Max Muncy,
getting on base is
Manny
just
Machado, key players for the Dodgers. Machado needs to hustle a bit more. We got to hustle out of here, though.
Yeah.
That's all the time we have for this MLB postseason block. When we come back, Andrew will be discussing the biggest winners and losers in fantasy football.
I'm one unlucky guy. The chance of being involved in a robbery is 1 in 757. The chances of being struck by lightning 1 in 750,000.
Please fasten your seatbelts for unexpected turbulence.
The chances of being a victim in an airline crash 1 in 29 million. Hey, could I get some peanuts? The chances of being involved in a car crash are far greater than lightning strikes and plane crashes. And if you are texting while driving, your risk of crash increases 23 times. Now, I may be an unlucky guy, but I don't have to be part of that statistic, and neither do you. Drive responsibly.
Take a look under your bed. Find stuff under there? What about jobs? No? Now try your closet. Still no jobs, just more stuff? Well, you really have both. See, stuff is defined as household articles considered as a group. Sometimes this stuff is no longer needed. Wait, no longer needed? That can't be right. Because remember those jobs you were looking for? Those are really needed. And they're the stuff inside your stuff. Our job is to unlock those jobs. And it starts when you donate your stuff to your local Goodwill. Here's how we do it. When you donate to Goodwill, we sell your stuff to provide job training for people right here in your community. So just by teaming up with Goodwill, you help create jobs. And isn't that worth parting with the leftover keytar from your 80s cover band? Goodwill. Donate stuff, create jobs.
Now it's time for This Week in Bad Stats.
Bad stats?
Horrible stats. Here goes. 132.
That's how many batters struck out 4 times in one game last season.
Wow, very good. Here's a tough one, though. 3 and 4.
No idea.
That's how many kids witness bullying. 3 out of 4.
That's not a good stat.
No, it's not, but it can change. Kids want to help, but they don't know how. Visit stopbullying.gov and give them the tools they need to help prevent bullying.
There are plenty of safe ways kids can help at stopbullying.gov.
Wow, these are really good.
You act surprised. Practice makes perfect.
You don't have to be perfect to be a perfect parent. There are thousands of teens in foster care who don't need perfection. They need you.
No thanks, Dad. I got it.
Okay. I'm gonna go fix the lamp in your room.
You don't have to be perfect to be a perfect parent. There are thousands of children in foster care who will take you just as you are.
6 weeks of everyone's favorite form of gambling, fantasy football. I'm here with Josh and Brad to discuss the biggest winners and losers of fantasy thus far. So Josh, I know we've talked about like Patrick Mahomes having a fantastic season, but who are some of your biggest winners in fantasy football?
Honestly, my biggest winners, Todd Gurley is a guaranteed 20 points every week. You've got Adam Thielen, who's having a record season right now. He was a sleeper pick, honestly. Not a lot of people considered him as a #1 receiver, but he's been putting out numbers every week. And Matt Ryan has been arguably one of the best quarterbacks to pick in the league. He's a sleeper pick. A lot of people get him as their second
100%,
QB.
100%. I look at it for winners as far as like relative production relative to where they were drafted. Melvin Gordon, running back 3, drafted high in the 2nd round. Kenny Galladay, a top 15 wide receiver, drafted in the 9th or 10th round in most drafts. And for those who picked up James Conner, followed the Steelers beat writers on Twitter, there is no more greater win than picking up James Conner before week 1 of the season.
Well, Brad, who are some of your biggest losers now in contrast?
So I think there's 2 that stand out to me. First off is David Johnson. Now he's putting up good numbers, but relative to where he was drafted, top 5 in the significant majority of drafts, he is not producing to that level. He's touchdown dependent, does not have many 20-point games, and the Cardinals' offense is dysfunctional to the point where he's producing at a 2nd or 3rd round pick rate. And then for the second guy, I would say Leonard Fournette. He's gotten, 9 points all season. He's been out pretty much the whole season. He was drafted low 1st, high 2nd round. People picked him over Melvin Gordon, and look how that's turned out.
Well, you looked at 2 running backs. I'm going to look at 2 quarterbacks.
Perfect.
Now, my first one is Deshaun Watson. Everyone was like, oh, wow, Deshaun Watson's like lighting up the league. He's been having very mixed games, lots of turnovers, lots of interceptions, not a lot of yards. He's been not living up to the hype. And also another quarterback I've been thinking about is Kirk Cousins.
No, he's been solid.
He's been all right, but he's not been like perfect compared to like where he's projected. He's got weapons like Thielen, weapons like Diggs, but
he's still around the top 11 mark. And if all right, I'll look at Deshaun Watson. There was no way that the numbers he put up last year were sustainable or realistic to be duplicated.
But he still got the weapons he had from last year. This is a healthy Texans team.
But I feel like the Texans' offense as a whole, you have great receiving options. The running game, Lamar Miller, Alfred Blue is always The offensive line has not been great. He's getting pressured a ton. But he was putting up historically productive numbers last year. People were drafting him super early because of that. That was never going to come.
People, like with Watson, he was like a top 2 round pick, and I feel like he's not living up to that specifically.
100%.
That's all the time we have for fantasy football. But when we come back, Matt will be back to discuss the college football playoff. Stay tuned.
This past weekend, college football was a wild one, with several upsets and down-to-the-wire finishes. I'm here with our college football experts Blake Snetman and David Flint to make sense of all the madness. So, guys, we got to talk about Georgia first. They lost 36-16 to SEC opponent LSU. Obviously, they're out of the top 4. How far do they fall, and can they make the playoff this year?
So I still think they're in the top 10, and I think they will make a push for the playoffs. I think they're at a lot better position this year than Alabama was when they took a loss at their very last game last season. But I don't see them making the playoffs. I think their schedule has not been that tough thus far in the season. They beat LSU. They lost to LSU. They also played South Carolina. Challenges coming up. They have number 11 Florida. They're also playing Auburn, who beat Washington in their opener and lost to LSU by 1.
LSU's always a tough place to play at home, but Georgia can get back and make the playoffs, but they've got to get to Atlanta, get to the SEC championship game, and beat probably Alabama, maybe LSU.
Oh, I can agree. They have to win that championship, the SEC championship game, no matter what, in order to get there.
So they got to win out and win the SEC, right?
All
right, yes. So let's go. Georgia's out. We know that. Who is your new top 4, David?
My top 4 right now, Alabama's number 1. They've rolled over everybody they've played. Clemson is still number 2. They survived their scare at Syracuse. Really, there's nobody else in the ACC that can compete with them other than Syracuse, I think. Because, Virginia Tech lost to Old Dominion, and while that might have been a fluke, they're still not as good as they were rated. Number 3 is Ohio State. If they can get past Michigan, and Ohio State, Michigan, throw records out the window for that one. That's going to be a scrap, whoever's there. But Penn State, Ohio State. Ohio State gets the nod there, I think. So Ohio State at 3 and Notre Dame at 4. They've just done enough this year. Didn't play well versus Pitt, and Pitt's a terrible team, but sometimes you have those mulligan games, and as long as Notre Dame stays undefeated, they should be in the top 4.
Yeah, so my ranking's a little different. I have Alabama at 1, unanimous. It's pretty obvious with them. My number 2 is actually Notre Dame. So Notre Dame actually beat Michigan, who was 14. It was a close one. They beat Stanford. They beat Virginia Tech. I just like their schedule, how they played those games. Yeah, they did have that bad game. Like you said, everyone does have that. At 3, I have Ohio State. Big win against Penn State, going into Penn State and playing that game late night on primetime football. That was tough, and the way they played was impressive. Clemson, they're my 4. They're undefeated, so I have to put them in the top 4. They almost lost to Syracuse, almost lost to Texas A&M. They had a little quarterback controversy, a little drama. I just think that's a little much. And their schedule hasn't been too challenging thus far in the season. It hasn't done enough for me to put them at the higher part of the top 4.
So you guys have the same teams, different order. We're sticking in the top 10 though. So UCF, they're 6-0. They had 31-30, great comeback win against Memphis, but they have not yet to crack the top 5 this season or last. Oh, they won 18 straight games. What do they have to do to make the top 4, and can they make the playoff at all this year?
They have no chance of making the playoffs in my mind. They should not make the playoffs in my mind. The caliber of teams that they play is just simply not good enough to be able to make the playoffs. Yeah, they can be undefeated, but I'm sure at least the top 15 in the AP rankings would also beat those teams that they're playing. And they don't deserve. You have to have a tough schedule.
No question. I mean, yes, South Florida's in the top 25, but UConn had to come back against Memphis, Tulsa, Houston. I mean, Cincinnati's decent, but other than that, who in the American is worth bragging about beating? And don't claim to me that using the legend Vern Lundquist to announce your conference as a Power 6 conference on your commercial makes you a conference worth of the playoffs, because you're not.
Oh, yeah. I just don't see it at all. And I think the closest thing to a good team they have is FAU, because Lane Kiffin was affiliated with the University of Alabama.
Right.
But that's
UCF
about
has to
it.
do something. In their defense, though, teams like Texas are dropping them from their schedule. The Big 12 doesn't want them. They got to do something, though. That's all the time we have left for college football. When we come back, we'll talk some way too early college basketball.
All right. I know this isn't any fun to talk about, but we should. Okay. So who's going to do what?
I'll pack the dead batteries.
Great.
I'll only put what I don't need into a duffel bag.
Perfect. That's totally unhelpful.
No problem.
Meanwhile, I will try to comfort everyone by speaking in a calm voice.
And I'll try to get the generator going without any gas.
Oh, let's not forget the cell phones, which probably won't work.
Right.
And who is going to handle supplies?
I can forget to do a list for us.
Thanks, pal.
Well, I think we couldn't be any less prepared. I'm proud of you guys.
Talk to your kids about who to call, where to meet, what to pack. Visit ready.gov/kids for tips and information.
So, same time next week?
Well, of course. Put away a few bucks, feel like $1 million. For free tips to help you save, go to Feed the Pig.
Wow, these are really good.
You act surprised.
practice makes perfect. You don't have to be perfect to be a perfect parent. There are thousands of teens in foster care who don't need perfection. They need you.
No thanks, Dad. I got it.
Okay. I'm gonna go fix the lamp in your room.
You don't have to be perfect to be a perfect parent. There are thousands of children in foster care who will take you just as you are.
We are less than 1 month away from the tip-off of the college basketball season. I'm joined at the desk by Drew Gentry and Ennis Warlick to break down this upcoming season. So, Drew, what is the team you're most excited to watch coming into the season?
I'm going with the Brotherhood and Duke University. They got the number 1, 2, and 3 recruit in the nation. You can't say that about many teams.
Absolutely.
Zion's absolutely a freak. Cam Reddish, he sat out that Canada tour, but we know what he can be. And RJ Barrett, absolute shot taker.
I mean, Barrett's the best college basketball player on this team, and I think he's going to be the best basketball player in the nation this year. Zion Williams, obviously just a freak, an athletic freak. He's going to posterize anyone. He's so explosive. This team is just way too good.
So, Ennis, what is the team that won't be as good as predicted?
So, I look at this team, and this team is very good. But Kansas, nobody's going to convince me that Kansas is the best team in the nation. They're currently ranked number 1 right now, and they're just not. Devontae Graham is gone. The best shooter on the planet, Svi Mykhailiuk, is gone. And this Kansas Jayhawk team, they do have a strong freshman class, but I don't see them being the best team in the nation. I think Duke is the best team in the nation right now.
I agree with that. Kansas is not going to be as good as they are supposed to be. But the team I think that's going to be like the most mediocre out of these top tier teams, top recruits, number 2 team, Kentucky. They have the number 2 recruiting class. They're always overhyped.
It's going to be a
They
dumpster
lose
fire.
to people they shouldn't lose to.
It's going to be a dumpster fire.
And then they're going to go into the tournament and get knocked out in the second round.
Absolutely.
Again, they just continually bust with their players. They create great talent. They do not play well together. And I think that's the difference between some of these coaches with the one and done. Calipari works well with them in the regular season, but come college season or come the playoff time, they just collapse.
So, Drew, what is your way too early championship pick? Who do you got?
I'm staying with Duke. We're talking about they're the best team in the nation. Yes, they're very young, but you got to look back to 2015 when they had a roster similar to this with very few elderly players, veteran players. They won the championship. They've had it the last 3 seasons.
So look, Duke is the best team in the nation right now. Do I think they're going to be the best team in the nation at the end of the season? No. I think that the safe pick and the best bet for the best team in the nation at the end of the season is going to be Villanova. And I think you can't really rule out a Jay Wright team.
I'm never going to rule out them. They've won 2 out of the last 3. They could go 3 for 4. You never really, you can't underestimate them.
Never.
I don't think they'll win it. I think they have the potential, like you're saying. I just think if Duke plays the basketball that they can, and they are absolutely
Duke certainly has the potential. But one and dones are never a safe bet. For me, Kentucky is a great example. These past few Duke teams, also a great example. I'm just not convinced.
That's all the time we have for college basketball. Next, I'll be joined at the desk by Matt to look at the biggest practice moments in sports.
In the immortal words of Allen Iverson, practice? We out here talking about practice, man? Andrew, there have been so many strange moments that have happened when the cameras aren't on. So what's the best thing you've heard to have happened during practice?
It's J.R. Smith throwing soup at assistant coach Damon Jones. He got a 1-game suspension from it, and J.R. is going to J.R. We can agree with that. Dumb. J.R. would not comment on the issue, but Tyronn Lue did. All he said was he had a little discussion. Great team management, coach. That's all I got to say.
I just want to know what kind of soup it is. I said Bobby Portis punching Nicole Mirotic in a Bulls practice. First, they had some disagreement. They were talking trash, and next thing you know, when Mirotic is on the ground, a fractured face, a broken nose.
Jeez.
And according to Woj, he said they haven't even made up yet. They're still beefing. Obviously, Mirotic got traded as soon as possible in February. What goes so wrong in a practice that you punch your teammate?
What goes so wrong in a practice that you throw soup on a coach?
On one hand, at least the Cavs were good. The Bulls have been bad for a long time. I can see why that'd be frustrating. Maybe Jared just didn't like his soup.
Either way, you would hate to be on the receiving end of either of those
soup,
things.
punch, all bad.
I don't know.
That's all the time we have for this episode of One-on-One Sports.
Huge shout out goes out to all of our producers, crew, talent, and you, the viewer, for tuning in.
If you like what you saw and want to see more, be sure to check us out on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, and Instagram, all at One-on-One Sports.
That's all from us here in the studio.
Until next time.
Whose side?